The next Lee and Ian podcast is approaching the station. Please step aside.
And welcome to the Lee and Ian Show. I'm Lee Navlin.
I'm Ian Grodman.
That's right, he's Ian Grodman. Today's very special guest is Jersey City Mayor Steve Fulop, a leading candidate to become New Jersey's next governor.
That's right. We're very happy to have him here.
Thank you for coming to Maplewood to spend some time with us. Can't thank you enough, Mayor.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
There's so much I want to talk to you about, so much we want to talk to you about. Jersey City, it's a great city. It's a great place to live, great place to work, to shop, to dine. Shout out to the worst bar, by the way.
Amazing.
Which is the best bar, the best bar.
Yeah.
Before we get into all that, though, I'm looking at your bio, Steve, and
By the way, how do you know the worst bar? That's like that's really an interesting thing that you shout out over there.
well, I know bars, you know.
Yeah.
So that's we love German food, my wife and I. So yeah, we just Zeppelin Hall,
Yeah.
worst bar.
Yeah.
Wow,
So we make
I'm
the rounds.
impressed, Lee.
But the worst bar, yeah. For those out there, Jersey City, the worst bar. Check it out. Check it out. So Steve, I'm reading your bio.
Yes.
I know so much about you because I'm following your career for a long time.
Okay.
What I didn't know, and this kind of blew me away a little bit. So you're working at Goldman Sachs.
Yes.
Okay. You're fresh out of business school.
Yes.
9/11 happens. Your response to the attack on America is to put your financial career on hold and join the U.S. Marines.
Yes.
First off, thank you for that. But
Thank you.
Secondly, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I'll give a little bit more nuanced story to kind of how that whole thing happened. So I told my managers afterwards I was going to enlist in the Marine Corps. And I didn't know anything about the military, really. Like it was foreign to me. So I started to kind of explore a little bit and talk to recruiters. And I decided ultimately the Marine Corps. Went down to Parris Island, initially on the reserve side. Came back to work at Goldman, and I was on the trading floor at that point. And if you remember, this is kind of during the time when George Bush was kind of on TV a lot saying, you know, we're going to get those guys, we're going to smoke them out, more focused on Afghanistan at the time. And then they pivoted
Right.
to like the whole...
To Saddam.
To Saddam, right? Which in hindsight, obviously, we see what it really was. But so you knew you were going to be deployed, or it felt like that. I went down to my reserve duty. So this is probably in January of, at this point, it's like 2023, so early. And I finished boot camp, my specialty training, Marine Corps combat training. I'm back at Goldman, and I go down to my reserve duty, and they were acting really strange. They were kind of, you know, asking you like bizarre questions that they don't normally ask. They were obviously giving you a lot of shots and vaccines, and then at the same time they were saying to you, you know, do you rent, do you own, are you married, are you single?
not
Personal
sound good.
questions, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And then they get us together on Saturday night, and they said you can leave and you come back on Tuesday with your will and your power of attorney. We're leaving on Wednesday morning. That's the way that works.
Wow.
And so I left, and my parents have like this modest vacation home in the Poconos, and they were there that weekend. And so I just drove there. I was in Delaware. I drove up to the Poconos. I got there at probably maybe 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. late. And my mom heard, obviously, the door open. She was surprised. As soon as she saw me, she started crying because she knew that they would never have released me unless something was happening. And that's so I go to work on Monday at Goldman, and I tried to grab my manager before, you know, the market opened, and he was kind of like very busy. And I said, it's really urgent. And he was like procrastinating, and he had other things. I was just kind of a junior guy saying,
Yeah.
"Could I please get some time? Because I got to tell you something
Right.
important."
Do you have a few moments? And he's
Yes,
like, I'll get to you when I get to you.
Correct, exactly. And so I'm on the trading floor, and then eventually I said, Tim, I need to talk to you now. I'm leaving now, and I got some things I got to do, and I will. I don't know what the next steps are, but I just wanted to tell you from an HR standpoint. And he says to me, I mean, he didn't know how to react because it was such an abnormal thing from an HR standpoint. He didn't know what the right protocol was from a Goldman standpoint, because
Right.
this guy's leaving to go to the military, being
How
deployed.
many people from Goldman Sachs
Nobody.
leave? Right.
Nobody.
Right.
Right.
And so
And to go fight in a war
yeah,
on top of
so,
it, perhaps.
So I go to my desk, and I wrote an email to literally everybody who's been in my life at some point, from childhood friends to college friends, just basically saying, this is what happens. You don't know what the future holds. I was thanking them for being part of my life, because you don't know. At this point, it was like weapons of mass destruction. We're going to Iraq, you know, the Scuds, blah, 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 blah. And so I write this email, and my plan was, because I was fairly emotional at the time, and I knew I had to go see lawyers, and I had a lot of things on my mind, and I didn't want to stay at Goldman more than 20 minutes. So I figured I had my jacket on. I was going to leave, and I hit send, walk out, and just not deal with everybody. Say thank you to people who. I mean, some people in my email were on that trading floor with me. Some of them were college friends, personal friends, nursery school friends, family members. So I hit send, I have my jacket, and I start walking out. And of course, emails are immediate, and somebody sees it. And then the whole trading floor, they started clapping, right?
Wow.
And I started to cry.
Very
I mean,
nice.
I got really emotional.
Sure.
I started to cry. And because, you were scared. You didn't know. I didn't know. And it was kind of like this thing. And I left the next day. I got my will and my power of attorney. I left the next day, and then we went to Camp Pendleton in California to get our like gas mask and our mop gear and all that stuff. We spent a couple weeks there just getting ready, acclimated, and then out to Kuwait. And then the first day we crossed, or the first or second day, crossed into Iraq, and then gradually up to Baghdad.
Wow.
And I'm living in like a tent with this guy Javier Vasquez, the size of this
table.
Yeah,
this
this
table.
Yeah,
I mean, we
right.
shared this tent. I mean, and
It's a
I
very
look-
small table, by the way.
Yeah, it's a very. It's. I mean, when I was there, because it was nothing. I mean, we didn't shower for 3 months.
Wow.
It was like a crazy thing.
Yep.
Like, there's nothing there. There's no email. There's
Yeah,
no nothing.
in the middle
There's
of the desert.
occasional mail comes,
Yep.
occasional letter.
Yeah.
And I kept like meticulous notes on who wrote me. Like I had nothing else to do.
Right.
And so if I thought that if you couldn't write me back at when you were here,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Right.
took it so personally. And to this day, if somebody didn't find their time to drop a letter or think of me,
Yep.
and I was like harm's way.
That's
they're not
amazing,
close
right?
to you.
That's when you learn who your real friends
Yeah,
are.
That's
yeah.
it. You really
Even
did.
if somebody wrote 2 sentences to me, hey Steve, I'm thinking of you, and threw it in the mailbox.
That's the world.
It's fine. It's totally fine. They got
Yeah.
full credit for writing
Right,
20
yeah.
pages.
That's
It
it.
didn't matter because I just knew that they thought about me a little
Right.
bit.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, like that whole experience changed my life because it kind of different perspective on everything for me, being out there. Like
Now
that.
you I think you rose to the rank of corporal.
So it's corporal, which is it's on the enlisted side. It's a E3. It's our job in the military was, or especially with something called bulk fuel, and it was called Bulk Fuel Bravo was my company. But basically, our job was building fuel farms. So the first 40 or 50 miles of Iraq, people don't realize it's just desert. And at that time, I mean, the technology's probably changed, but roughly when you light the ignition of like an Abrams tank, for example. It's like 5 gallons of fuel. These things are like really, really fuel sucker. Like they
Right.
use a lot of fuel. So the challenge that we had for the military was that we had to figure out a way to, because there's no roads in those first 40 miles. It's just desert. It looks like the ocean. As far as you can see, just sand and nothing. And we needed to figure out a way to move fuel up to the roads because I think Baghdad was 200-300 miles away. So we had to figure out a way the trucks that would normally carry the fuel would sink in the sand, of course. So our job was to try to figure out how to lay these pipes in a couple days with viscosity that would move it because the pressure is tough, 40
Right.
miles, and
Right.
it's hoses, and then secure it, and then in order to move forward. And we didn't know if it would work. Nobody knew if it worked because it was the first time that the military's ever done anything like that, and it worked, which was a great thing. And then just gradually continued up to Baghdad, and then we settled maybe. We were going convoys back and forth into Baghdad, but we were probably there for about 10 miles outside of Baghdad is where we ultimately were.
Yeah. Wow. Pretty amazing.
Steve, so you
Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
thanks.
Thank you for
I
your
don't talk
service.
about it in a lot of detail
I
like
know.
that normally.
I know.
so,
I
yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
So you get out of the military, and if that's not a movie in and of itself, by the
Yeah.
way, that whole story right
Yeah.
there, you go back into the financial sector, but then you're living in Jersey City, and you decide you want to get into politics, and lo and behold, I think you're 28 years of age, Jersey City Council, you're elected, like one of the youngest guys ever to get elected
Yes.
Well,
in
there was
Jersey
something
City.
before that, though, right?
So the mayor at the time was this guy Glenn Cunningham. He was the first African American mayor, and he was this guy that he had a lot of friction with the Democratic Party in Hudson County because him and Bob Menendez were clashing. And most people would say that Cunningham was on the side of good government and Bob Menendez was Bob Menendez. And it was very public, but it was foreign to me I didn't know any of that stuff. And Cunningham invited me to City Hall more to just give me a proclamation as a Marine that was deployed. So it was my first time there. I wasn't registered to vote, not involved. And we spent a lot of time in his office. He he and I got along great, but I didn't think anything of it. And then a couple months later, he invited me to City Hall and started to talk to me a little bit about this kind of political dynamic. And he gave me this pitch to run for Congress against Bob Menendez. And I thought at that time it was just like in a chapter in my life that I didn't know, anticipate. It was just, hey, this guy gave me an opportunity. Why not? You know,
take it, right?
And I registered, and I thought it was something I'd tell my grandkids, and you know, it was that experience with him which changed my life to run for office the following year. And
It
we
was like
won.
a Yogi Berra thing, like you see a fork in the road, take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that experience changed my life. And you know, I try my best to tell young people, because I'm very involved in like colleges and mentoring, that always like the one thing that I think has been really helpful for my career trajectory is that I've been willing to kind of take risks and go in this uncomfortable area when somebody opens a door for you. And and those are some good examples of it. So
Yeah, no, 100%.
That's great.
So getting to talk about, you've done so much for Jersey City. Perhaps you're going to be in Trenton. There's a very good chance you're going to be in Trenton. You're one of the front runners right now. We'll talk about some of the issues that are most important to you, right, Ian?
That's good,
Like
yeah.
anything cross your mind specifically?
Well,
Ian's the policy guy, but I'm the guy that's going to be, after the podcast, going to be, hey, Mom, guess who I met today? But Ian's the policy guy. So,
So
Lee refers to me as a legal scholar. My mother would be very proud to hear that. But it's not true.
It's not true.
Yeah.
I look at it as twofold. I think there are things that I think are very important for the next governor to confront around transit and affordability, which are the kind of the common things that we talk about. And I think I'm detailed and have good plans for that. And then there are things that I am more personally passionate about as it relates to environment and health issues and diet, health, that sort of stuff. And those are things on the side that I'd like to accomplish while I'm there as well. So I kind of look at it as twofold. You know, you ask about what's important. I can talk about the school funding formula and transportation and all that stuff. I think there's a lot of things that we can do around health equity and opportunity. And if you look at what's happening today with people, even our age, I mean, it would be hard to argue that there's not higher rates of diabetes and cancer and all sorts of things. And I think some of that stuff is largely environmental and diet. And I mean, we eat things in this country and in this state that are permitted that in other countries are illegal. You know, like that's true, you know?
Right.
As crazy and wrong as RFK is, okay, the one thing he does point out on these dyes, these food dyes, which is true, is that they're illegal in other countries and they're allowed in the U.S. and they say on them they're carcinogenic. You know?
Right.
Like,
We're poisoning our people, and Europe knows not to poison their people.
You know, it's a crazy thing if you think about it as a kid. You know, you go to the supermarket and the strawberry's this big. Today, a strawberry is like a baseball.
That's it.
You
It's
know,
like a grapefruit.
It's like a grapefruit. It's like
Right.
really, it's a crazy thing. And so you got to ask yourself, is all that stuff good? And I'm not an expert in it, but I could see the disparity between when I was a kid versus what it is today.
But I think maybe you are a bit of an expert, right? Because I've noticed as I look at your website and some of the things that you've done and accomplished in Jersey City, numerous awards for what Jersey City has done for health and health for children. And maybe talk to us a little bit about some of the programs that you put in place in Jersey City that maybe you're interested in kind of doing on a statewide level.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jersey City has done a lot on vertical farming and healthy diets and education to some economically challenged areas, access to supermarkets. I get a lot of credit for it, Ian, but the reality is I've just hired very good people.
Right.
And our director...
It's an important skill.
It's a good skill to have,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a learned skill.
Right.
I'll be honest with you. I made a lot of mistakes initially. When I first got into office, I thought I made some mistakes on directors and leadership positions that you learn along the way. And as I got better and better, our leadership, their team today is all people that, first of all, they've bought into the mission, and they're people that could go tomorrow and make $1 gazillion in the private sector, but they're there because they really believe in the purpose. I mean, our director of infrastructure, anybody who follows this stuff would say she's a rock star. Our director of economic development, I mean, she went to Harvard undergrad, Cooper Union undergrad, and then Harvard graduate school, and she was working major architecture firm. I mean, she's mission driven on economic growth.
Yep.
So the health department has been, because we've got a really great director there
That's great.
who's been focused on food insecurity, as a matter of fact.
Wonderful.
Very good.
being that this is a Soma-centric podcast, South Orange, Maplewood, I think you're familiar with this community. You've been here quite a few times, Steve. The LGBTQ community here. We have a very large and diverse community in South Orange and Maplewood. We'll talk a little bit about
As Jersey City does.
as Jersey City
Yeah.
does too. Yeah, talk a
Yeah.
little bit about what that means to you and
I mean, look, Jersey City has, I think, arguably the largest LGBTQ community in the state of New Jersey. We've been ranked consistently as one of the best municipalities as it relates to kind of laws and ordinances protecting the LGBTQ community. And that means that we have things like task force in city government. We're conscious of inclusivity. We're conscious of bidding process to include those types of businesses. We've extended healthcare coverage to the transgender community prior to this whole conversation around the transgender community. So I think in 16 or 17 because I thought it was very important to do. So I think our track record is really second to none. We have an amazing nonprofit there called the Hudson Pride Center, which we are huge supporters of. And I think it's been an important narrative, and I'd be the same as the governor. I talk about this stuff, whether I'm on a conservative podcast or radio show, or in this kind of setting on South Orange Maplewood, that the importance of kind of standing up for vulnerable communities. And today in particular, the transgender community happens to be one of the more vulnerable communities because the president just uses them as a punching bag whenever he has a bad day. Politically, he
the
pivots.
transgender community.
That's what he does. That's literally what he does. And it's really important that people call attention to that. And my fundamental belief is that if you're able to communicate with the public on how that community is vulnerable and why the Republican talking points are misguided, particularly like use college sports as an example, right? There's 500,000 college NCAA athletes. There's less than 10 that identify as transgender. Yes, they've made this a litmus test. It's a manufactured issue.
It's become a headline when in fact we've talked about that on
The
this
head
podcast
of the NCAA
before.
testified before Congress, the exact same numbers that you're talking about. And yet they still continue to bash this all the time.
Because they like to say that this is some sort of gauge on how you think about things. And I always say the same thing. I say that, as long as there's been some sort of record, there have been people that identified as transgender, maybe not in the same science as we do today, but they've identified as differently. And up until President Trump 3-4 years ago, everybody acknowledged that a transgender person exists, Republicans and Democrats. And so I always look at it and say, if I acknowledge the fact that this person is this person, then it's not for me to arbitrarily decide when I acknowledge that they are. In this situation, you are a man. In this situation, if I say that you're a woman in this situation, then you're a woman. Okay, that's it. So I view it more in that vein, and I talk about it. But I think that you can't shy away from it if you're going to be competitive in November. And I think it's the right thing to do just as a person.
Thank you for doing that. Yep. I have another vulnerable group I want to ask you about, right? And I know that in Jersey City is maybe the first city that has ever had a city devoted to immigration issues, right? And helping and protecting immigrants in this country. And that's something that's very, very important to me. If you could speak a little bit about what you've done with that and maybe what you would do if governor, as governor going forward.
So we established in 2013 an Immigrant Affairs Office in City Hall, and it's actually the only nationally accredited Immigration Affairs Office in the country in the municipal building. And I give credit again to the fact that I've hired the right people who have been terrific advocates, and they've really done a good job in building this. But we do about 1,000 cases a year, and they vary from helping people that are undocumented to helping people that are documented to partnering with nonprofits to refugee resettlement programs. I mean, it's pretty robust. And Jersey City is recognized as the single most diverse city in the country. And when you go back, let's say 50 years, the reason is because Ellis Island is part of Jersey City. So people would come through Ellis Island, and it's the first place they'd settle. So it's just kind of rational that that's why it would be what it is. Whereas 50 or 60 years ago, it was like Polish and Irish and Italian.
Right.
Today, it's more South American and Southeast Asian, but it still has that immigrant sort of bend to it. So it's been important to me. I think the governor has not done a great job on this, to be honest with you. I think that particularly like 2 weeks ago when Alina Habba was threatening or saying we're going to investigate him over immigration issues, that meaning the governor, and I maybe they sent out a press release or whatnot, but that was the moment for him to say, okay, we're going to pass the Immigrant Trust Act. We're going to reaffirm dollars to nonprofits.
I agree
Actually,
100%.
like put your like actually say I'm not going to be bullied. I'm actually going to go the opposite because I believe I'm right.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead they didn't do anything.
Right.
And I think that is a major gap with regards to kind of Phil's leadership. To be honest with you.
Right. So there's some.
And for those who are listening, if you don't know who Alina Habba is, she is the new Trump-appointed U.S. attorney for the District of New Jersey.
I think she was his personal
Personal
attorney.
attorney.
She was,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So young and inexperienced, but she seems to have a
very
lot
much
to say.
A
Yeah.
Trumpite.
Yeah.
Steve, wanted to talk to you about. I know it's something that people are talking about. Before we started the podcast, we were chatting. We talked about anti-Semitism in it rears its ugly head.
Yes.
There is the IHRA, which is a working definition of anti-Semitism. I know you've opposed some pending legislation. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that?
I'll tell you, I had a interview yesterday with the Jewish community in Jersey City, and people there always push back around this IHRA legislation because some of them get upset that I'm not a supporter of it. And they've kind of used that as a gauge to say that somehow he's not supportive of the Jewish community. And I welcome the conversation because I think that's really misguided logic. And I'm going to take a step back and tell to your listeners here that I come from a family of Holocaust survivors, okay? I went to an Orthodox yeshiva growing up. I went to Golda Ach or Solomon Schechter afterwards.
West Orange?
In West Orange, yeah. So I'm knowledgeable about Judaism. I have 3 Jewish kids that are being raised Jewish. So I'm invested personally. My track record, I mean, we're the only municipality in the state of New Jersey that has a sukkah attached to it during. So we're the only ones.
That's great. That's great.
I mean, I could go on all day. Like in 2019, when there was an anti-Semitic attack, and Phil Murphy and the Attorney General at the time didn't want to recognize it as anti-Semitic. I pushed them because I thought it was a public thing where we had friction as a result of it. So I view this IHRA legislation, and those of you who don't know what it is basically it's a definition of anti-Semitism that is called the International Holocaust Definition of Anti-Semitism, and it's been proposed and passed in some other states, and it's a discussion here in New Jersey on whether it should move forward. And it's become this litmus test on who can win between the Muslim community and the Jewish community, and it's unfortunate because anti-Semitism changes in every generation, and to define it is not an easy thing. And if you try to define it, inevitably you're going to have something outside the box shortly after that doesn't fall into that. But the reality of the situation is that there are a lot of hate laws today on the books. And you don't need necessarily more laws, and I'll talk specifically about this one. You need somebody that enforces the current laws and makes sure that hate crimes aren't what they are today and being allowed to expand.
They're not happening.
They're not happening. South Orange actually passed the IHRA legislation in 2018, and Sheena Collum would be the first to tell you that it has changed nothing. It had like the same rates and everything.
Right.
To me, this IHRA bill is problematic in twofolds. Number one is that it's going to bring to surface the conversation in Trenton that why do Jewish people have special legislation as it relates to hate crime? Because there's other types of hate that exist, okay? And the second thing is how it defines some of the conversation around Israel that people will actually have a problem with. Regardless of what you view on this, and I say this to the Jewish community, I said it yesterday, as a matter of fact, is that once that bill comes up, you will see 5-6 blocks of people testifying that are anti-Semites. You are going to summon the anti-Semites together, and you could see the sentiment in the press.
I agree.
And in the legislature that they're not going to pass it, that they're not supportive of it. So you're going to put all these anti-Semites together and create this tremendous friction around legislation that has very little chance of passing. And what's the outcome ultimately if it passes?
It's going to be harmful.
It's good. Yeah. So I haven't been a supporter, and I get it that the politics for me is easier to say, yeah, I'm a supporter or not a supporter.
Right.
But
to it.
I think it's very short-sighted.
Yep.
And personally speaking, I'm Jewish. You're Jewish. I think the easier
I'm
thing.
half Jewish.
You're half Jewish. Easier thing might have been to just okay, fine.
sure,
But
sure.
but you've got an opinion on it, a very strong opinion on it, and I don't disagree with you on that.
Yeah.
So
I think this. Look, if you're going to be successful in November, and this is something I say repeatedly because I don't think all the candidates do this, you have to be able to actually have some convictions and say,
Right.
this is what I want to do, or X, Y, Z. A lot of the conversation in the primary today is about Donald Trump, right? Because polling says
Sure.
you should bash Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
right.
When you get into the general election, so we're 5 weeks away, you have to be able to not only say that they're wrong, because you have to articulate a different vision that people in New Jersey can actually embrace, because you cannot win the election just with Democrats.
Right.
You need to move independents and Republicans, and a lot of those people voted for Donald Trump.
That's right.
And so you need to thread that needle in a thoughtful way of saying, look, you're wrong or misguided on this vulnerable community conversation. Let's talk about it, right? And if you're not able to do that, which I don't think all 5 of us or 6 of us are, you're going to have a big problem in November.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we saw that in the presidential election last year,
sure.
right? And the Democratic Party continues to struggle, with not addressing some of these issues forthrightly, right? And you're doing that, and
Yeah.
that's a great thing.
I mean, the Democratic Party needs to articulate a vision beyond
Yep.
just saying that we're against Donald Trump,
That's it.
right? And I think that Kamala struggled for a lot of reasons.
Yep.
I mean, sexism, racism, short runway to run a campaign.
All of that.
But also, you got to be able to articulate a vision of what
That's right.
the United States of America will be under you that's different than Joe Biden.
That's right.
Otherwise, people weren't going to gravitate towards that, and
Yeah.
they didn't.
Yeah, well, she had an opportunity at one point to say, "What would you do differently?" And
Oh, that
she-
was a mistake.
Right, and
Right.
right. She needed like 5 bullet points right there. Well, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4.
Right.
But she didn't want to. She didn't want to offend Joe Biden.
didn't want to rock the boat.
I think
That's
to
right.
a degree.
That's right.
And
That's right.
She was in a difficult position, but still, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a short runway in a difficicult position
Yep.
for sure. But look, we could all be Monday morning quarterbacks. But
That's it.
But she could have said that was that was devastating when she said, "I'd do exactly pretty much the same thing," is what she said, or
Yep.
continue.
Yeah.
And then everybody was like, "Well, I don't really like what's going on here now because Joe Biden." I don't think Democrats sold it. They did a lot of great things under Joe Biden. They just didn't sell it enough
Right.
to the public to communicate to people. These are the things that we've done.
right, right. I mean, the right and Trump. I mean, it's been 4 years bashing everything he did, and there's inflation, and things start to go up, and the other side is bashing and smashing, and then the other side is not responding and
Right.
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Failing to respond. Yeah.
failing to respond.
I mean, Donald Trump to this day, like think about this for a second, right? Donald Trump to this day, we're 102 days in, whatever it is, right?
Feels like
And
502
it does.
days.
It does. But he's still, everything that goes wrong, he still talks about Joe Biden.
Right.
That's it.
And Joe Biden got in office, and because he's a gentleman or just maybe a better human being, right? He didn't for a week say everything is Donald Trump. He said, let's move forward, and we're
Right.
thinking about this. So I just think that they don't do a good enough job on the Democratic side of selling their accomplishments and communicating that, because he had a lot of great things that he did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have on the other side, you have basically a frat house, in my opinion, running the country with at least the attitudes and the
Yes.
banging the chest and
Yes.
so
And
forth.
when there's also a fear of, in extolling the good things that we've done, maybe alienating some of those centrist people, some of those people on the right. And we can't do that, because I think there are enough people who will come onto that
True.
side.
I agree
And
with you.
It's really important.
So, Steve, I know this summer we love Sheena Collum, Lieutenant Governor.
She's amazing.
She's an amazing. If someone had asked me a year ago who would make a great lieutenant governor, and then someone
I've said for years Sheena would be great
right,
as the
she
head of
probably
DCA.
she would have been the top about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have said me number 1 and Sheena number 2. But even though I have no political experience, but yeah, how did you run across Sheena? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I met Sheena originally. Well, let me take a step back. What year was Sheena first elected?
This is going back maybe
8 years,
10 years,
10
about
years
10
ago,
years
I
ago,
think
right?
it's 10 years at this point.
So maybe
16?
so maybe 9 years ago, there's a family that's very involved in Jersey City that owns a bunch of catering halls, right? They own something called the Liberty House. Now they own 2 or 3 more in Jersey City.
Yep.
And the last name of the family is Cretella. Really great people. And this guy, Frank Cretella, he owns probably like 10 or 20 of these things around New Jersey. says to me, I met this amazing new mayor in South Orange.
Was he Village Hall? Is he there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. They
so
got Village
so
Hall.
I,
Yep.
I said to him, who? And he says, it's this woman,
Yeah.
Sheena Collum. And I said, why? I was scared, like I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
kids,
like weird.
South Orange
He's
mayor.
Orange.
Yeah. Why bring her
and,
up?
and
Right.
He
Yeah.
and he says, what she's proposing to do is that she's going to sell the Village Hall, okay, and turn it into this catering hall
Yeah.
and restaurant. And she talks about kind of the inefficiency of this office space or this municipal building, blah, 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 whatever Sheena was saying at the time. And so he tells it to me, and I said to Frank at the time, I said, Frank, don't waste your time. That will never, ever happen.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, why? And I said, because there's no way that anybody in elected office could sell to the public and
Right.
convince them to sell Village Hall
That's
or
right.
City Hall or whatever
right.
and turn it. And I this is the conversation I
Yeah,
had with
yeah,
him.
yeah.
And then fast forward, I mean, I go to events there now and it's like great. And I always say
Yeah.
to Sheena, it
It's
is amazing.
fantastic, yeah.
It's amazing that she was able to accomplish that. So that was my first exposure to her. I met her then personally through a mutual friend, the mayor of Morristown. So there's this like network of mayors. He said she's really great. They communicated a lot, and then she and we would talk a lot about policy stuff and developed a friendship. She was supportive of the campaign. I asked her probably in December about being the lieutenant governor. So this goes back some time, and initially she was hesitant. Then she said the timeline doesn't work. And I just kept coming back at her, just, pushing and pushing, because I really think that she's beyond talented.
She is.
Yeah.
And I think that she's a good partner for me because she brings a lot of skills that I have maybe deficiencies in, right? Like she's got a better perspective of suburban development than I do. I
Yep.
come from an urban area. And her personality is very different than mine, where at times, I mean, I could be more kind of like direct, and people think it's too serious at times, right? They'll tell me smile a little more if I'm being open with you guys. And she is like this bubbly,
That's it.
outgoing.
Everybody
like
loves her.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I've seen
yes.
Sheena walk into a party and she knows everybody. You
Yeah, she
know,
does.
it's
She
just-
does. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
thank you for that. We also have Nancy Adams as the mayor of Maplewood. We have two great mayors in
That's
Selma.
it. Yes.
Just want to give her.
We
a,
always have great mayors in Selma.
You
Yes.
do. Nancy's a good mayor too.
She
That's
is.
absolutely true.
And we've had Vic DeLuca, Dean Daffis,
Yeah.
and we've
Yeah.
always had great mayors.
former
here.
vice mayor of
Former
Maplewood,
vice
too.
mayor right here. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ian Grodman himself.
Many years ago. Yeah.
Transportation, trains. There are Facebook pages for Soma where they're talking. This train's not running. That transportation, trains.
Yeah.
That's big.
The pricing
big
in
one.
and out of New York that they tried.
He knows Maplewood and South Orange.
Yeah.
This is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that I have a larger and more comprehensive transportation plan and experience than any of the other candidates. Beyond doing and starting the largest bike share program and protected bike lanes and complete streets and Vision Zero and all this stuff that we've done in Jersey City, we built out the largest microtransit system in the country there, and we started that in 2020. When I say microtransit, do you know what I mean by that? Or?
Not really.
So what was happening in Jersey City is actually a phenomenon, unfortunately, statewide, where a lot of these bus routes that were privatized, a whole nother problem, which we talk about, have largely been abandoned. The private company says we're not making money, and then they abandon the line, and the New Jersey Transit struggles to kind of fill it, and sometimes they don't fill it.
Right.
And most of those gaps happen in largely economically challenged, poor areas that are really minority communities in a lot of times.
Right. That really need the transportation.
That really rely on this transportation. And so New Jersey Transit abandoned, for the most part, a real large portion of the southern part of Jersey City. So I started to think a little bit more about how could we figure out a solution without relying on New Jersey Transit that works the same way. And if you take a step back, bus systems, right, if you think about them, they're not the most efficient use of kind of the vehicles in transportation, because it's a large, huge vehicle and they're moving down a fixed route, whether they have 5 passengers or 55 passengers. They're on a fixed time, so it's not dynamic. It's a set route, and people live all over, and it's not always environmentally friendly. And with technology today, like think of it when you call an Uber on how you could see the map and it comes. The technology today allows all of those things to be solved. You could have dynamic routes, pick people up closer to their homes, shared rides, environmentally friendly, and only moving when somebody calls upon them. So that's kind of the thought process of a microtransit system. So we have a system in Jersey City that it's an app that you say, I want to be picked up. And then let's say the three of us relatively in the same time, let's say in the morning commute, say we want to be going to Journal Square, but we don't live together.
Yeah.
The algorithm would recognize that we live in the same geographic area, and it would say, Ian, go to this block 3 blocks away, Lee, go to this other block 2 blocks away, and Steve, go to this block 1 block away. And the vehicle, which are these large vans, would pick up all 3 of us and 2 other people.
That's great.
And take us over to Journal Square. We've done 2.5 million rides in the last 4 or 5 years. It's wildly successful. $2 a ride, just like New Jersey Transit.
Fantastic.
So it competes, and it's something you could scale out, which I think is really important, and do it in other suburban and urban areas. But New Jersey, my point on all that is I have some experience on this.
Sure,
Yeah, that's great.
So
That's great experience.
I think that we talk a lot about the funding source and changing the tax structure in order to directly fund New Jersey Transit so you could bond against the revenue in order to modernize train stations. People have to feel that a train station is clean, safe, in order to kind of want to keep going back to it.
Yep.
Technology upgrades so you could see when your train is coming, how it's working, et cetera, instead of today it's just on Twitter or X or whatever, like when it's broken down, you know?
Yep.
Talk about investing in infrastructure. I'm kind of standalone on the canceling the New Jersey Turnpike widening project and reallocating that $11 billion to light rail expansion. We talk about privatization of the buses, going away from privatization and bringing it back in-house, really important. So our transportation plan, I think a lot of these things I could get done in the first 30 to 60 or 90 days because they're administrative fixes. And then there's some other things like moving path out of the Port Authority into New Jersey Transit, and there's a whole rationale why that might take a little bit more time because it's got to be a gradual phase in. But transportation is key to our platform.
Excellent.
Is that your top priority? So, I mean, we're talking a lot this week about the first 100 days, right? So if your first 100 days of governor, I'm assuming that transportation is one of your priorities.
Yeah.
What would the other ones be?
I think, Ian, the first 100 days, you got to do a lot of things around revenue and taxes because you're not going to be able to do it again because you're not going to have the same political capital. So the first 100 days when people are trying to understand what the administration will be like, maybe people are a suspect or intimidated or want to work with you. There's a lot of different emotions in those first 100 days that allow you to get things done that you may not be able to get done once people settle in. So you talk about millionaire's tax from 20 years ago is no longer millionaire's tax. You need to adjust the tax brackets. Yep. There's obviously a tax around, like things like the farmland tax credit. So if you have a couple goats or beehives today, you could be totally tax exempt. I mean, use Trump
I sit
Bedminster.
on the county tax board. I know.
So you know it.
Yes.
So
Yep.
like Trump Bedminster, the golf course there, he should be paying whatever, $250,000 a year in taxes. Yep. He pays nothing because he has goats there.
That's right.
Yep. And it's
some wetlands or something too, I think, right? There's,
what he has over there?
Yeah.
Well, I heard, and I don't know if it's true, so I don't want to but I heard he's got some tax credit because he buried his ex-wife there. So there's a cemetery. There's a cemetery situation.
Not laughing
because
that's what, but yes,
there's a cemetery thing going on over there. There's the farm tax credit because he has the goats there.
Right.
And then close to, I guess it's I don't know if it's 280 that he's close to over there. I understand that big flagpole on Trump Bedminster, he's kind of gotten designated as this 9/11 monument. So you can't he manipulates the system better than anybody.
He's the king.
That's what he does.
Right, the king of manipulation.
And it's really crazy. Yeah. It's really crazy.
And to Trump's credit, when he ran in 2016, he said
that.
He said, when Hillary Clinton said you don't pay taxes, he goes, because I'm smart. And he kind of, and I think that kind of helped him win the election when he was like, one of them was telling everybody else how they operated.
That's right. He said, I think at one point he said something to the effect of, I know the system better than anybody because I manipulate it.
Yeah,
he actually said, I know it. Of course I know
That's it.
Yeah.
I think there's the fact that that's what he says, and there's an authenticity thing that his base, even though it's crazy what he's saying, gravitates toward
They
that
eat
because
it
they
up.
don't feel like he's a scripted politician.
right.
Right.
And there's such a visceral reaction today to scripted politicians that you cannot be successful if you're just doing that same playbook. Whereas people think that you're just doing this talking points. You're not going to be. People
right.
don't want to hear that today.
No, they don't.
You're in a world. I mean, TikTok.
want you to
is
do
it's simple.
something. Right.
It's authenticity is what it
That's it.
rewards.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
You know, speaking of that, everybody's talking about going up against Trump, right? Who's going to go up against Trump, right? And you actually have experience in Jersey City going up against the Trump organization. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there's a bunch of things. I mean, I partnered with CARE, so that's the biggest Muslim advocacy group. When after 9/11, he repeatedly said that they were dancing in the street, and then when he got elected in 2016, 2017, he would say that the Muslim community in Jersey City was doing all these dancing on roofs and streets, which was just not true.
Absolutely false.
So we did a lot of events around that, and then specifically around the Kushner family. So Jared Kushner and his family sued me personally and the city professionally over a tax abatement. So the thought process there was that on his side was that there's two sides to the Kushner family, and they don't talk. There's
interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah. So there's two sides, and there's no communication there.
Right.
And you could Google the history on that when the one Charlie ended up going to jail for the prostitute.
Jared's
the
father,
whole family,
right?
whole family broke, and they don't talk. They haven't talked in like
Interesting.
25 years.
Okay.
So the one side that's not related to the president wanted to build a building in Journal Square, and Journal Square was a place in Jersey City that we didn't have any development at the time. And so he started the negotiation and concluded it with us around a tax abatement for that project because it was the first one in Journal Square. It was a union project. It was kind of really in a area that we didn't know if it would succeed. So he gets this tax abatement and builds the building, and it's successful. Great. Okay. Jared's side, or Charlie, then comes because they have this kind of like competition with the other side, and says, we want to build a building and we want to go a little higher, and we want to tax abatement the same thing that he got, a little bigger, and we said as the city, we said no, because we said it on the merits is what I said. I said, look, that building got a tax abatement because they were the first ones, and we didn't know if it would work. We know it works.
Right.
So why would we give you the same thing? Because the risk isn't the same. Right. And so they sued me personally and professionally, saying that the reason that I was blocking their tax abatement was because I don't like the president, and that's their family member. That was the lawsuit. Okay.
That was the argument.
That was the argument.
Yeah.
And so it goes through 3, 4, 5 years, and they ended up building the building without the tax abatement, which is great. And I mean, they went through maybe 7,000 emails of mine through the Oprah process in order to kind of like search for me talking about their building and the president, which I never did.
Right.
Regardless of how I feel about the president, which is pretty clear.
Right.
I really do think that we made a decision on the merits there that he didn't deserve it. You know?
Yeah.
And even when they tried to push us, I was just like, you don't deserve it. And that's where we ended up.
It wasn't the right decision for Jersey City.
It wasn't the right decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, on the subject of taxes, so I've lived in Hudson County, by Hoboken. I apologize. It was Hoboken many years ago.
I lived in Jersey City before Maplewood.
Where'd you live?
I lived across the street from City Hall on Grove Street.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Really?
I
What
didn't
years?
know that.
What years?
92 to 95.
92 to 95.
Yes.
Very different place there.
Yes, very different place.
And Hoboken was different too when I was there. But so I've lived in Hudson County, I've lived in Essex County, I've lived in Sussex County. I love New Jersey. I think it's the greatest place in the world. My wife, as a matter of fact, she's from Massachusetts. She lives in New Jersey. She loves it here. She says the high taxes are a luxury tax. You have Newark Airport 5 minutes away. You got skiing. You got the beaches. You got New York City. You got Jersey City.
You have the best schools in the country.
You got the best schools, but the taxes. Not everyone's my wife. People complain about taxes. When you're in Trenton, what can we do?
So let me start by saying that when wealthy people talk about New Jersey taxes, and then they say, Florida has this. You've heard the talking points. Florida has this, and this is that. And I always say that Florida is not our peer, right? Somebody's not making the decision between Florida and New Jersey. It could be, you could make the argument Pennsylvania and New Jersey. You can make the argument Connecticut and New Jersey, New York. Florida or Montana is not our peer.
No,
okay?
not at all.
Right.
It's
Not
like
at all.
it's like
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, it's a different part of the country, different world.
And people live here largely for the reasons that you touched on,
Those priorities.
and proximity to New York City, geographic density, culture, arts, restaurants, all these things that some of the other parts of the country don't have at the same magnitude that we have. And so how do you address the tax situation? I do think that you need to find revenue from the top part, the wealthier people in New Jersey. I talked about that earlier. I think the school funding formula does need to be revisited. For sure.
Yep. I
think that this program, like the Stay New Jersey program, needs to be revisited, but the concept is right about retirees staying here. I think there are things that you can do on the revenue side to really kind of sharpen up where we are. Are you going to be able to lower taxes 50%? Probably not. Okay.
Yep.
And I don't think that's a realistic expectation.
No, if anyone promised that, I mean, you vote for the other guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But I think you can do things to, minimize the hurt for people and make them streamline and hopefully cut taxes, to be honest with you. School funding formula is a big part of it, and supply of housing is a big part of it.
So what would you do? I mean, you have seen tremendous growth in real estate development in Jersey City. There has been a huge increase in affordable housing as part of that. What do you see doing statewide to make housing more affordable for people? And not just affordable housing rentals, but what kind of programs do you think you could put in place to help younger families maybe buy their first home?
Yeah, I think to get people to buy a home is really a supply conversation to drive down costs, right? You got to get this NIMBY attitude, right, and move that away. And there's ways that Trenton can do that by using dollars to incentivize mayors that are actually building housing and creating more transparency around those that are creating obstacles. Because I think that if the public knew, for example, that Milburn was costing their taxpayers millions of dollars by fighting COA and a requirement that they're going to build anyway, you might get to a different outcome where they don't drag their feet for years. But supply is a big part of the conversation for young people in particular. I think readjusting, and Sheena talks about this in particular, starter homes and middle markets. And Sheena was probably the best mayor in housing in the state of New Jersey. I really do think so, because she's done it in South Orange in a suburban town trying to balance all the different interests.
That's right.
When I've done it in Jersey City, it's a urban sort of development, so it's a different mentality there and expectation. So Sheena's a good partner, and if people have questions about whether we're going to be good on housing, I mean, I just point to Sheena. That's the one thing that is most important to her.
Yeah.
Steve, I know you're short on time. You have a busy day. You showed me your schedule before we started, and I don't envy you. You're a busy man. But just before we close,
I want to ask one more question.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, and this is just because I'm really personally curious, and I'm really excited that this is something that you've been working so hard on. What's going on with the Pompidou Center?
So, let me give some backstory on this. So,
okay. It's not a short answer, I
know.
know.
No. But I'm very excited about it.
Yep.
Okay.
Me too.
So, for those people that don't know, I have leaned in hard in arts and culture in Jersey City, and I think there's probably not a city in the country that has done what we've done. We've put a trust fund together to fund arts-related nonprofits with special grants that are done like as a tax on that was voted on as a referendum. We were the first in the country to do that. It's been replicated. The New Jersey Symphony Orchestra is moving their headquarters to a theater that we've built.
Fantastic.
They're moving out of NJPAC and moving to Jersey City, which will be an amazing thing
great.
right near the Grove Street Path. We have a $100 million Lowe's Theater project, which is a 3,000-seat theater that was opened in 1929. It's one of the 5 wonder theaters in the country, and it's under restoration right now. Be open by the end of the year, and then I started this process in 2015, where we had this building that we acquired on top of the Journal Square path, and I said to the county executive at the time that I think it has really great bone structure. And I think that because of all the diversity in Jersey City and the growth and the proximity to New York, if somebody will listen to the pitch that we have, I felt that we could get a national partner or international partner of significance in arts and culture. I didn't imagine that the Centre Pompidou from Paris would be the one that actually, like, we catch. They are the largest collection of modern art in all of Europe. They have a location in Shanghai, Brussels, Paris, and Jersey City will be their North American headquarters. It is, I mean, in fast forward 4 or 5 years, you will go to Journal Square and you'll be able to see Picasso's and Matisse, which is a crazy thing.
Yeah.
So the approvals were done, finalized 4 or 5 months ago. I think contracts I saw 2 weeks ago signed, and the building location, which was a parking deck, was just torn down. So it's going to start construction very soon. So you're probably 4 years away, but it's moving. I mean, it is moving. We spend a lot of time communicating with them, and
you've been working hard at it.
It's going to be a great thing for it's going to be a great thing for New Jersey.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
absolutely.
My last question to you.
Yeah.
Because
This was great, by the way. I really enjoyed the time, guys.
You know,
That's
you
good.
coming out here, Steve. This
it's
is
great.
We appreciate it.
you love this area. It's pretty clear.
He already does. He
and
already
you're a
does.
Jersey guy.
Yes.
I know you grew up in Edison.
yes,
I mean,
yes.
so
He
you
went to
know,
school in West Orange.
West
I
School,
did,
West
I
Orange.
did.
Yeah, so
did.
One Jersey guy to another Jersey guy. Again, I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
But people, I mentioned a couple friends. We're gonna have you on there. I said, talk to them about education, the Department of Education, what that means for New Jersey, public schools. Maybe can you just kind of...
Yeah, look, I think this is another place that the legislature and the governor could do better. If you look at the state constitution, there isn't a lot of definitions around what the Department of Education looks like. And I think what President Trump has done in the last 3 months has redefined what is acceptable from an executive to do on education. So let's go to an extreme example, because you're going to have a Republican eventually elected in the state. It's hopefully not November and hopefully not for a long time, but at some point it'll happen.
But they live here.
They live here. And let's say Bill Spadia was elected in November, okay? And under those new set of rules and guidelines that President Trump has said is acceptable, that you could basically do anything with public education now that you couldn't do before, things like that he would care about, things like religion in school, things like gender identity, outing kids when they're younger, right? There's no guardrails at all. I think that the one thing that New Jersey should be doing at this moment is recognizing that education has changed in how we look at it. And while we have a Democratic governor, a Democratic Assembly, and Democratic Senate, they should be pushing for this November referendum to clearly define what education will look like in New Jersey and the things that you can't do. And I think, for me, I outline this stuff because I'd be a different type of governor. I think that you need to not only say I'm against Trump on overall, you need to say when he tries to bully you on immigration, you need to say, okay, we're going to push back and actually pass the Immigrant Trust Act. When they get rid of the Department of Education federally, you need to say, you know what, we're going to better define in the state constitution what education looks like in New Jersey, so that way we're putting our flag in the ground that we don't agree with our actions as much as our words. And I don't think we're doing a good enough job on that today. But that's a longer answer for...
Okay, it's the answer.
Time.
That's the answer.
Next time.
Right. Now I could say I asked the question.
Right.
Good.
Right.
Ian,
You won't
anything
get in
before
trouble.
we
No.
call it a day?
We very much appreciate you being here today,
guys were
Mayor
great.
Fulop.
Yeah,
Thank
really
you.
great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Mayor, thank you so much. The 2.5 Jews podcast, I
That's
guess,
it, 2.5
better known as the Lee and
Jews.
Ian podcast.
There we go. Right.
So Mayor, thank you so much for your time, and
Thank you,
until
guys.
we meet again, everyone,
Thank
good
you.
night.
Good night.